Thanks for attending. Today's webinar is about how best practices in piloting startup technology. So we'll be kind of going through some of the best practices and things we've learned as a startup working with large enterprise companies and some of the sort of learnings and best practices we've picked up along the way. We have these webinars almost every Thursday. It's probably every 2 Thursdays or so. It's obviously fairly disrupted with all the holidays coming up, but we do record these and publish them on the same link where the registration happens. You can register for any upcoming ones at this link, but also if you just go to sheptravel.com in the resources tab, there's a link to the webinars where you can register for new ones and see videos of old ones. I think at this point, we've probably done about 15. And they include things like demos, previews, new features, how-tos, best practices. So sometimes it's specifically, new feature that we've built into our product. Sometimes, like today, it's just a general topic that we think is kind of valuable to our audience. So the reason we're talking about this is big companies and big vendors that service enterprises move very slowly. And there's a couple of reasons why. Stability being one. They have to be stable with these big companies that they're servicing. So the vendors have to be stable. And that means they have to be fairly slow moving by design to maintain that stability. They also, they're sort of saddled with the inability to do a lot of experimentation. Unlike a smaller startup who can wake up in the morning and say, hey, this customer asked for that feature, let's just build it and see what happens. A large vendor has to be very careful and intentional about what they're doing and how they're doing it. Both because they, want to, again, maintain that stability, and throwing new features in can disrupt things, but also, the expectations of their customers are already set in stone. So if suddenly a blue button turns pink and moves to the top corner, that's going to, upset a whole lot of people and confuse them and such. So they're not able to do as much experimentation. And as I hinted at, both of those are because they serve a lot of very large customers. And so, they have to maintain stability, reliability for a lot of people who rely on their services. So this is why a startup pilot might be the answer to sort of solve a problem in the organization. It can solve an existing problem you have. Oftentimes it's like a niche element of your business, your department, maybe a gap in the sort of tools you're already using, and it's not important enough, big enough, or it's too niche for a large vendor to come and solve that. But it is something that kind of just sticks in your craw and you want solving, but there's just none of your big existing vendors can solve it. And it also positions you, particularly as the sort of champion, if you're the person in the organization championing the new tech to solve the problem, positions you and the company as being more innovative, being able to step out of the shadows of the big guys and try new things and sort of support that innovation landscape and ecosystem. And then it draws more attention and more resources to your department and job function within the company. So the last one was sort of externally, your company can be seen as more innovative. But here, your specific department, everyone is looking at you as saying, wow, look, they're trying new things, they're innovating, they're not just doing the status quo, which helps you, your position, your department within the organization. So we are introducing a sort of a framework of how to reduce the red tape. I'm going to share my other screen to walk through that. And we have given this the catchy title of the Pilot Limitation Ladder Framework. So I'm going to just switch over to my iPad quickly. As I was saying, this is the limitation ladder. We'll TM that. So we've made that up, and very important. And basically, there's a few things you want to be able to limit so that you can get this new technology through the door at the company, past your information security, your IT department, to try and get a new, potentially or seemingly risky technology that's, relatively new in the market and unproven. How do you get this in front of your team to be able to see if this will solve your problem? So the first thing you want to limit is the access. So you want to limit the sort of access to data or tools that the startup might have. And this often means carving off a part of your database, or maybe you're giving them access to just a sample data. It's not real live data. So you're able to prove the use case while opening the doors and giving them full access to everything within the company. Another one is to limit the users. So for your pilot, you sort of set a time frame. We usually do about a 3 to 6 month pilot, and we limit that to about 500 employees. And that number could be anywhere from 10 to 1,000, but you basically want to get to a statistically significant number of users that will give you feedback and allow you to see if this works before you then go into procurement to try and scale. But you want to limit those users. You don't want the entire company getting in there and testing and giving feedback, because that would increase the sort of security requirements, but also might even overwhelm the startup on day one. So you want to kind of build that up. You want to limit the touch points, which is similar to access. This sort of relates to APIs, integrations, departments that this company interfaces with. So you want to try and cordon off, or put them in a little box and say, you're only accessing these APIs, these databases that are relevant to this department, because the more interplay happens between different departments and systems, the more security worries that can bring up. Then you want to limit the budget. And this is one of the benefits of being able to do a pilot, is often you can work with the startup to come up with a pilot cost that ideally is within your discretionary funds. So you're not having to go through procurement and get approved budget. You're able to say, for a few $1,000s, we're going to do a 3-month trial, see if this works, before then going and taking the business case up channel to try and get more money from the approvers. So being able to do a pilot limits the budget quite dramatically. You're not having to sign a long recurring contract. Then you want to limit the stakeholders. And hopefully, if you've done all of the above, the stakeholders have been limited, because you haven't had to go through procurement in the same way as you would normally. The legal requirements are going to be less because it's a pilot. You sort of identify who's involved in the pilot process and evaluation, and then who would be involved in the procurement process after the fact, and keep those two separate so that you're only working with the people you have to work with at this point. And then finally, again, if all of that is true, then you should be able to limit the paperwork too, and not have to sign big, heavy, master services agreements, but instead being able to sign a much abbreviated pilot agreement, because the risk and the exposure is much less than it would be in a full deployment. I'll show you here. The way we run pilots at Shep is we do manual sign-on. So when we do a full deployment, we work through SSO, which obviously includes IT deployment and all that. So everyone gets involved in that process. So during a pilot, we limit that by doing a manual sign-in. So now when I say I'm going to sign in, instead of doing this through SSO, I'm typing in my username and password, which naturally doesn't scale great to an entire organization. But if we are just looking at a small limited group testing, that eliminates the need to integrate into SSO. And now our tool would work the same way, but we've been able to eliminate an entire step in the go live process. So now, if you said you're going from London to, for example, Cape Town, we're able to sort of like show you the guidance for South Africa, and even show you things like the carbon impact of that trip. So, all coming from this. So you get still the full functionality.
Is that from the Shep stuff or from the Concur stuff?
This is Shep platform on the side here.
Cool.
Yeah, so we're able to read fields and adjust. So, again, I'm going to change that to Paris. So I'm going to Charles de Gaulle, and it all updates.
Mm-hmm.
Tell people to stay at, your preferred hotel. Tell them they should maybe take the train instead. Get Brexit. So I've obviously got a lot of things here, but just show the way, all the different kinds of modals you can trigger off of these actions. So let me go back to the slides to wrap up here. So yeah, basically, as you've seen, what Shep is the ability to bring bite-sized snippets of your policy to life across the web. Works on 5 different OBTs and 4,000 consumer websites. And we've also, related to this whole topic of piloting, we've created an ebook, which we'll actually send afterwards to everyone that registered, that has a link to the ebook. And you can sort of download that, and it's got a lot more detail and gets into much finer points that can be, that wouldn't fit into a 15-minute webinar. Yeah, and that's it. That's our 15 minutes. So I do appreciate you for being here. Any questions you might have, feel free to type those in. But otherwise, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.